Welcome to the Album Nerds Podcast with your hosts, Andy, Don, and Dude.
What's new? It's the Album Nerds Podcast. I'm Dude. I got Andy and Don with me. Andy, how are you doing?
Doing great, buddy. I was kind of just waiting for Don to jump in with the what's new pussycat. Whoa there.
Yeah,
I fought the urge.
Himself.
Yeah. He had a vein pop in his forehead.
But yeah, no, I'm doing good. I'm just, over here generating content for all the AI bots to farm. So
aren't we all?
Keeping our overlords happy.
Well, they are the greatest, and I fully support them. Wink, wink. That's for the future. I'm safe. Don, how you doing?
Nobody likes 2023. What was that stupid song? Nobody likes you when you're 23. Was that like Sublime or something? Or Blink 182?
Oh, that sounds
yeah, you're right. That's Blink 182.
Nobody likes you when you're 23.
What's my age again? Okay,
What's my age again?
Yeah, that was a dark time.
Yeah, well, someone brought me roses, boy, the stairs, so it made me feel better.
That's how you know she cares.
Okay, enough nonsense. This is the Album Nerds Podcast. We enjoy and love the album format and talking about albums. Today we have a great show. We're going to be talking about some new release albums. But first, we're going to go over our listening week. What did we encounter on our travels? We'll go over our individual album selections. Then we're going to answer a question that's loosely related to today's topic. And then we're going to spin the wheel of musical destiny to find out what we're going to talk about next time. But it's all about those new releases today.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, we've already discussed some interesting albums from 2023. Back in episode 195, we explored Eve's Tumor. Remember that?
It's not a tumor.
Yes. Praise a Lord who chews but which does not consume, or simply Hot Between Worlds. Of course, Depeche Mode's Memento Mori, and the legendary Iggy Pop's latest Every Loser. Then in episode 208, Andy introduced us to emo band Home Is Where, the album called The Wailer. Remember that one? The Wailer.
Yeah, oh yeah. I wrap you in intestines. Yeah.
Dude presented the latest from the Foo Fighters, but here we are. And I presented indie supergroup Boy Genius with their first album, The Record.
They are still catching fire, man.
Oh, yeah.
I'm hearing tons of stuff about them.
Yeah, and they just came out with another EP. So today, each of us will present another album from the year 2023.
Yeah, so the list is getting longer and longer. It's more of a struggle in our first exploration of new releases this year. But as the year goes on, there's more records. So that's always
It's
nice.
easier. Gotta like that.
So how'd you guys do?
Pretty good. I'm going to throw out a couple of things I've been enjoying besides what we picked. The Pretenders, been around for a little while now, put out a really good record called Relentless a couple months ago. Sort of a dance-orientated record from the group Jungle called Volcano. Been enjoying that. Kind of like a singer-songwriter folk record from Matt Maltese called Driving Just to Drive. I think that's pretty high quality.
He needs to have an album called Falcon.
The Maltese Falcon. Very funny. I'm getting my hip-hop fix from Offset. If you remember him from the group Migos. He has a solo project out called Set It Off, which is pretty fun.
That was like mumble rap or something, right?
Yes, exactly.
I got broads in Atlanta.
Wow, you're a virtuoso.
Very good, Don.
All right. Well, I actually was listening to records from older artists. Surprise, surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Public Image Limited. That's Johnny Lydon, famously of the Sex Pistols. But he's been with Public Image Limited for 40 years. Their most recent album is actually pretty good. End of World. Do you guys remember the band Teenage Fan Club? They were out in the early 90s. So they're still going. Their album, Nothing Lasts Forever, is decent.
I thought that was a cool band name then, but now that they're in their 50s, it's kind of creepy.
That is weird. Yeah. And I just wanted to mention an interesting project from Duran Duran. It just came out this week. A Halloween-themed album called Dance Macabre. Actually features just like 2 new songs, some remakes of old songs of theirs that kind of have like a Halloween or horror tie-in, and then some covers of sort of Halloween-y songs. So.
Yeah, I bet Simon Le Bon could make Monster Mash sexy. So I went back to the well of older artists to some degree as well. Extreme, the 80s, 90s funky metal band, I guess.
More than words.
Saying that. No, okay. And then I went with Brant Cobb. I looked at Southern Star, his new album this year. It's kind of interesting. I didn't dig in too deep, but he's a country artist that was kind of very rootsy earlier on, and this has more, I don't know, not dance, but it's up tempo. It's interesting.
Interesting.
The Lemon Twigs, Everything Harmony, a indie duo, been around a little while, brothers. Oh, and the Rival Sons, who have been around since like 2008 or so. They have released 2 albums this year, Dark Fighter and Lightbringer, which just came out this past week. I am still trying to reconcile those 2 companion pieces, so I made a different choice. All right, let's get to them choices.
You choose me?
But it was incidents in the life of a slave girl that I was drawn to, and I was fascinated by her story.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Love those British accents. All right, so for my new release selection here, we're talking about Corinne Bailey-Rae and her 4th studio album entitled Black Rainbows. Corinne Bailey-Rae is a singer-songwriter from Leeds, England. This record is inspired, as we heard by the clip there, by an art exhibit that she had seen in Chicago about Black history. She said that the exhibit summoned thoughts about slavery, spirituality, beauty, survival, hope, and freedom. And that is what the album is loosely based on. Let's play a clip from Peach Velvet Sky.
Take that, Tori Amos.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
In your face.
So that song in particular, I think, is pretty hard-hitting in terms of the content. It's about a slave who was kind of forced to, or a slave on the run who was kind of forced to hide in this small area and kind of peek through a peephole in the door where she could kind of just see a hint of the peach-colored sky. Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting record. It's quite diverse in terms of the sounds and genres covered by Miss Rae.
Yeah.
A lot of R&B, as we heard there. She definitely has a singer-songwriter element to her, but there's tracks that are pretty heavy into garage rock and some psychedelic pop and even some kind of jazz experimentations happen throughout here. The 3 words I used to describe this record are rays, colorful, blackness. I was pretty surprised by this record, and I'd heard some of her previous albums, and they're a little more kind of like sultry R&B was how I describe her output to this point. But this is a pretty diverse collection. I guess she was in a punk rock band before she was kind of stuck out on her solo career, and it shows here. I was impressed particularly by those kind of more rockin' tracks. Yeah, why don't we play one of those more upbeat kind of garage rock punk kind of sounding tracks now? This is New York Transit Queen.
Bit of a change of pace there, John.
Yeah, when that song first came out, I'm like, what the hell am I listening to? Actually, it reminded me, I thought it was like Holla Back Girl or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the many left turns on this album. Yeah, it's really all over the place. But that song, that one actually grew on me. Like, despite its like kind of silly, oh Mickey, you're so fine, you're so, like that kind of delivery.
Yeah, totally. The hand claps.
Lyrically, it kind of has like a Lou Reed urban poet vibe or something, like that New York City transit thing. There's a playfulness to this record, right? So it's obviously, we talked about there's some serious themes, but there's still, there's some fun going on. And that's one of the fun tracks there. And also kind of hints at her sort of punk rock past, I think.
Yeah.
The 3 words I chose to describe the album are had no clue. I remember like in the first decade of the 2000s, maybe watching VH1 or something. There was like a big marketing campaign for her when what was the song? Put Your Records On or something. Like just at the time, I sort of dismissed it. And, I just was not interested at all. And so when Andy chose this, I'm like, oh, great. But yeah, I mean, not what I expected at all.
Enough.
It's everywhere, and it's interesting. I mean, she really has an edge to her that I didn't expect. It reminded me of, people like Bjork, who also is sort of like kind of a queen of eclectic sounding things. But yeah, it's got some punk rock, it's got the R&B, it's got some dance, it's got some jazz. It's it's a really interesting record. Even that last track, which is kind of strange, is it Before the Throne of an Invisible God?
Yeah,
kind of had like a Nina Simone vibe. I thought.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely just an unexpected experience. This album.
I did not make the Put Your Records On connection. I remember that song now that you mention it, but
Yeah, she's been around for a little while.
this makes this even more interesting. I assumed this was a young up and comer in the scene. So I guess that explains some of the maturity actually in the way that these songs are constructed and the lyrics and the way that the theme is woven. So that makes a little more sense to me.
Yeah, so, I mean, the theme, I would say, is loosely woven throughout a handful of the tracks here. There are a good number of tracks that are more like traditional in terms of their singer-songwriter content. One of those tracks, play a little clip from here. This is called He Will Follow You With His Eyes.
To run to sweet George and Brown Dew. I'll be smoldering in my plum red lipstick, my black hair kinking.
I enjoyed that song. It's interesting, and I think that one does actually have the theme in it, in that it seems like the lyrics are pointing out that you don't need to conform to what media, magazines, Instagram, whatever defines an attractive woman, especially straight hair and things were mentioned. So it feels like a white ideal of beauty, and that you don't have to conform to that, but be and embrace yourself. Wear your hair naturally, wear whatever color lipstick you want to. You don't need to try and be anybody but yourself. I appreciated that. And the end of the song, it has that jazzy feel, that Eartha Kitt kind of vibe, but then it gets a little more in your face at the end, which I think is interesting as well. The 3 words I used to describe this album are box of chocolates.
You never know what you're going to get.
And I did not get what I expected from this. This was, as been mentioned already, a cornucopia of flavors. You've got some nougat, you've got some caramel, you've got coconut, you've got all the different flavors in your box of chocolates. And I just think it was somehow, once I got used to it, it fit together. At first, I kept checking Spotify, like, did this switch to a playlist? Because this can't still be on the same album.
Right, totally.
But yeah, I mean, it's got elements of, like I mentioned, Eartha Kitt, but then it's got Kate Bush seasonings in there. There's just I feel a lot of influences of strong female artists that did things their own way. And especially now knowing that she came from a kind of more pop VH1 oriented background, I appreciate this even more for its adventurousness.
Adventurosity.
Exactly.
Yes, that's a good word for this record, I think. Kind of a spark of creativity here, it seems like she went through, and it's a pretty interesting result. So, yeah, if you have not heard Black Rainbows from Corinne Ray, I think it's worth a listen.
Double rainbow all the way across the sky.
I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
If you're enjoying the show, and we sincerely hope you are, do us a solid and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Maybe we made you laugh or you discovered an album you enjoy. Leaving a review keeps the show going and helps other music fans find us.
Got a broken soul and a dusty heart.
Jeff, sorry, what's up with these lyrics? Dusty road? Were your family Okies? Did they experience the Dust Bowl? Or
No, they're like upper management. There's not literal dust.
Okay, so my pick for a 2023 album is from Wilco. The album's called Cousin, which was just released in September. It's the 13th studio album from the American indie rock band based in Chicago, Illinois. Wilco is mainly a vehicle for singer-songwriter Jeff Tweedy, born Jeffrey Scott Tweedy in Belleville, Illinois in 1967. Let's hear the closing cut. Actually, this is Meant to Be.
Feels like 70s rock radio.
Actually, my wife mentioned George Harrison, kind of a George Harrison vibe there.
Yeah, I'd see that now.
Yeah, I didn't pick that out right away. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward, kind of moody pop song. It's I think it's a beautiful love song, even though the lyrics are simple. We're meant to be. I don't know. You can still do a love song without it feeling trite. So Tweedy does a good job there. The three words I chose to describe the album are dreamy, moody pop. And, when I think about my own tastes, that's kind of where I live and, what I prefer. I just love this kind of, simple, moody pop, or like it seemingly simple, but always, just very carefully arranged and thoughtful, kind of a muted or subdued album, I would say. I actually saw Wilco open for REM in 1999, and I remember just being kind of underwhelmed and bored by them. And I've always kind of felt that way about them. I got into that album, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, back in 2002, and I liked it, but I just never really connected with them. And maybe it's just like his voice or something. I just was just always left a little bored by Wilco, and this is really the first album of theirs that is really connected with me.
Interesting.
Well, what about that whole alt country movement that came from Sunvolt and what was the band that Uncle Tupelo?
Yeah.
That kind of started it all. Were you into that sound at all?
Yes. I mean, I like that overall alt country sound, but I even like with the Jayhawks and stuff, those records, I always kind of lose interest, right? I just kind of get bored with them.
Well, yeah, it always sort of has like a coffee shop bookstore feel.
Yeah, it does. This album was produced by Kate Laban. No relation to Simon Laban.
Too bad.
Welsh artist. Apparently, the band didn't really plan on choosing an outside producer, but, I think she had a unique approach, which I guess, really, brought out an interesting album from them. Well, let's hear more. Here's a song called Pittsburgh.
Well, I love the rain and how the rain can turn shit into a rose.
I think that would make a great Valentine's Day card. All right, so Pittsburgh. Maybe it's just about Pittsburgh. Maybe not. It seems to have themes of introspection, confronting your own fears, like he even mentions being afraid to sing, even after all these years, the doubting yourself even when you're an established artist, and everyone has that, whether you're an established professor or an established whatever the hell I am, or artist like Andy, there are times where you're like, do I really know what I'm doing here? And I kind of like that he's still thinking about that after all these records. And then the line, I've outlived my dreams, kind of implies, at least to me, that he's still doing this thing. They're still making music, and the dreams have already been fulfilled, but continuing to come. That's the way I saw it anyway.
That's heavy.
Yeah, totally. Like cloud cover.
Yep.
All right, so the three words I use to describe this album are "for a rainy day." This would have been perfect for a rainy day album show a few months back. And I think Wilco in general has kind of taken that on, as we kind of alluded to earlier, where they do have that sort of contemplative or contemplative, however you like to say it, where they have this sort of thinking man's rock thing going on, where everything is a little cerebral. Sometimes it feels forced cerebral, which I think is part of what the appeal is to people who really love this, where it's kind of like, the Wilco fans, and I have been one, there's a tiny bit of oh, well, if someone doesn't like it, well, you don't get it. There's sort of that element to it.
It's a little bit of snootiness.
Yeah, a little bit, just a touch, nothing overbearing. This is more compelling for me than anything since Sky Blue Sky of 2007. They've had quite a few albums in between there. I did not fully engage with this album, and although I didn't really get a chance to get as deep as I would like, I want to continue to listen to it. There's something there. I just didn't get enough listens in to put my finger on it.
All right, well, let's hear some more. This is Soldier Child.
Soldier, fast to forget what it's like to be.
Now I hear John Lennon, so yeah, now that's going to be the sticking point through my future listens of this album.
Yeah, lots of Beatles tie-ins here, I'm sure. Yeah, I really enjoyed that track.
I was going to say it sounds more like Klaatu.
Yeah,
Klaatu.
that was perfect.
Yeah, Soldier Child there's a really, like most of the album, a really crushingly kind of sad, melancholy song. The touch of some interesting production there. So the 3 words I used to describe this album are masters of little, not that they're not masterful, but I think it's all those little touches, like as Don was saying earlier.
Yes.
Like, these songs are deceptively simple, but there's just enough to them to really make you kind of like want to peel at the edge a little bit to figure out, what's inside.
So would you say that they're focused on all the small things?
Nice.
Gosh, another Blink-182 reference on the show. No, Wilco's is like kind of a magical band that it's like, there's definitely something to them. It always kind of amazes me in how they can produce like such a simple record, but then it becomes memorable for me, like after a couple listens. So yeah, I was pretty into this one as well. I think, surprisingly, we picked songs from the end of the record, but I thought the beginning was actually pretty strong too.
Yeah.
In terms of some good melodies and some catchy moments.
I almost went with the opening track, but the one I picked supported my 3 words. So
yeah, right. Yeah, so Kate LeBon's production, I listened to a few of her solo records, so I had an idea of what her music sounds like, and didn't really translate directly into this record, though there's a few moments where you can kind of hear some of the shimmery things that maybe she added or took out from the mix. But yeah, overall, I did enjoy this record. I think they've been on a good run. I've enjoyed quite a few of the records over the last 10 years or so, in my opinion. Jeff is still pretty active and doing some interesting stuff.
Well, wasn't that opening clip that we played, wasn't that Kate giving some direction to Jeff during the recording of this album?
That's funny.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so my pick from 2023 was Wilco's Cousin.
What's their name?
Some band should have the name Wilco's Cousin.
Yeah, let's go.
Excuse me. I'd like to ask you a few questions.
And now, Deep Questions by Don. So it's Halloween time. So here's your holiday. Remember that one? That was Blink-182. Hope you enjoy it this time. You gave it all away. Remember, it was about their parents getting divorced or something.
That's deep.
How come I have the best command of their catalog?
That's a very good question.
I think it's because you have the best command of mimicking a childlike voice for the.
Anyway, so it's Halloween time, and here in 2023, there's some horror movies at the box office. There's another Exorcist movie. I think it's called Believe, the sequel to The Nun, Saw 10.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Exactly. So
it's like Fast and the Furious of horror movies.
So how do you guys feel about horror films, and what are your favorites?
I love horror movies. They're definitely one of my go-to genres in film. So yeah, my wife and I, we try to do every night in October, try and watch another horror movie. We watched all of the Conjuring and Insidious movies this year, which there are, I think, 7 or 8 total, combined the two franchises. Among that bunch, I would recommend The Conjuring 1 is a pretty freaky film if you guys haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's a good one. The second one's okay too.
Yeah, of all those series, get progressively worse generally the further you get from the original one.
Yeah, so I enjoy horror movies.
I'm going to use a bad word. Horror.
Horror movies. One of my favorites is John Carpenter's The Thing with Kurt Russell, 1980, I think. I just like the feel of it. I mean, some of the special effects
are awesome.
They are for the time, but the dogs mutating, I feel like could be a little better. But I'm glad to, at least it's clearly puppet dogs and you don't have the fear that any dogs were harmed in the filming of this movie. But yeah, I mean, I like the classic stuff, your Friday the 13th and that kind of stuff more than the modern. Exorcist is probably the only movie that truly creeps me out. So I don't really get scared. Like the jump scares don't work on me. So unless it's kind of like outlandishly stupid and therefore funny or really smart story, I don't do a lot of horror movies these days, but I like horror related TV shows like The Walking Dead and things like that.
Well, yeah, I actually go further back than that for classics. So in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there were two British film studios, Hammer Films or Hammer Productions and Amicus Productions. They do a lot of fun movies from that era. Hammer does a Dracula series of films starring Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
Oh yeah,
also Frankenstein, and so I try to watch all of those in that era. And Peter Cushing, I mean, just watch his films. He's in a lot of bad ones, but they're still worth watching because his performances are amazing. He's a really underrated actor, and of course, people know him as was it the Grand Moff Talk? What was this character in Star Wars?
From Star Wars,
Tarkin, something like that. He's the guy with the sunken-in cheeks.
Yes. Okay, what are your favorite horror films? Let us know. Hit us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Also on Discord, albumnerds.com/Discord.
Hey guys, I'm Bryan. Didn't mean to be a musician, it's really beautiful what happened with just writing songs and stuff. For them to turn into something is more than I could ever ask for.
So we're going to be talking about the country music darling, Bryan. Zachary Lane Bryan, born April 2nd, 1996.
Isn't that a clothing store?
Lane Bryan, seriously?
No, I think we need a T on the end of Bryan.
That's
yes,
right.
well, his fashion fortune is what set him up for his music career.
I see.
He hails from Oolaga, Oklahoma, I think. He was born in Okinawa, Japan, while his family was stationed overseas with the Navy, and then grew up in Oklahoma. His parents were both Navy people. I think his dad was a Master Chief, and he was actually in the Navy for 8 years and started his music career by just on his off nights writing his songs, playing them on Twitter or whatever, putting videos on Instagram, and just for fun, and it turned into something. All right, so we're going to play a song from this self-titled album, Bryan, which was released in August of this year, 2023. Let's listen to a little bit of Summertime's Close.
There ain't no cure for the summertime's close.
Is there a cure for your incessant singing?
No.
Good.
Ever breathe a breath as fresh as you? And I've seen children playing on the coastlines under the white lines atop the blue tides, but I ain't ever been baptized in water as cool as you.
So that song showcases what Bryan does, which is deliver poetic verses with nice little metaphors and lines, but then using his sort of understated vocals and then kind of bursting forward with some emotion.
Yeah.
So Summertime's Close focuses on nostalgia, recollections of a past relationship, and I think he kind of compares freshness and purity of the relationship at the beginning stages to a breath of fresh air. And that I like the use of baptism, being baptized in the cool waters and all that stuff. I'm going to describe this album in 3 words and just say the real deal. I mean, the guy has had this meteoric rise from 2017 when he started on social media. His first album was 2019, self-produced, and then by 2021, he's at the Grand Ole Opry. He was honorably discharged from the Navy, kind of like Elvis was from the Army. And and this is his fourth studio album now. So he started in 2017 from nothing and has 4 studio albums.
Yeah, talk about a meteoric rise.
So why don't we listen to another track? This one is called East Side of Sorrow.
Lights started beaming in from the east. 6 a.m. and fucked up again. Asking God where the hell he been.
Pretty fun driving melody on that track. Yeah, not exactly an original sound, but I think he does it well there. 3 words I use to describe his album are Zach pulls up a chair. I feel like he's really kind of become part of that, upper echelon of country music, or at least this style of country music / Americana. And this record really seems to solidify his position there. I think it's a pretty strong record overall. It's very consistent in tone and quality. He really does have that sort of poetic sort of, simple truce nature to his songwriting, which I think works really well.
Cowboy poet kind of a thing.
Cowboy poet, that's right, yeah. The record isn't nearly as raw and bare as I think we reviewed that Deanna record quite a while ago, which was
the first
very
one.
stark.
Yep.
This is a much larger sounding affair, and quite a few big names featured on some tracks here. Casey Musgraves, Lumineers, etc. But it feels very much like a Zach Bryan record. You don't really hear a lot from those individuals. Yeah, probably my biggest critique would be it's kind of samey for a fairly lengthy record. There's not a lot of variety in terms of, the instruments being used, or there's not a lot of change in his voice from track to track.
Yeah. I think he writes songs and just records them and gets them out there. I don't know how constructed anything is just yet. Who knows what the future holds? This dude's really young and can pretty much make anything he wants at this point. But for now, it seems like he just goes through his notebook of lyrics. I've got 17 here. I'm going to do 17.
Put them together on an album and press it. Yeah, I mean, good on you, man. If you can just pump out this kind of quality, I think you should keep doing it.
Self-produced, yeah. All right, so why don't we get into another track, I Remember Everything.
I wish I didn't, but I do. Remember every moment on the nights with you.
Cold shoulder and closing time. You really need to stay till the sun moves.
Yeah, so that's a song that was co-written and also features Casey Musgraves. I believe that song's quite popular in country radio at the moment. Seems like it's a conversation between 2 former lovers. You're getting a unique perspective from each person. Seems like alcohol is involved in the story there. So kind of a cool kind of darker duet. And the arrangement or the instrumentation is quite simple. I think it's just acoustic guitar, and then there's some strings in there, which is typical of the whole album. The 3 words I chose to describe the album are dreamy, moody, country. Right, so basically the same as Wilco, just switched out the pop for country.
Yeah.
So again, this is the version of country that I like best. Kind of a simpler presentation, yet there's sort of subtle things underneath that make it interesting. There are a few times on the record where I'm like, oh, that's a cool drum part there, or a cool drum sound. There's a little interesting bass line, that's not obvious in the mix, but there's some cool things going on when you listen closer.
And Don, have you listened to some of the older records?
I haven't. Yeah. No, this is my first experience with him.
It's definitely getting more full as he goes on, and he's doing this by himself. I can't imagine that. I just feel like a rock record, a Americana rock record is on its way. There's some more rock elements here than I've heard in his previous recordings.
I could see that East Side of Sorrow song kind of getting the Springsteen treatment.
Yeah.
Kind of felt that way.
Yeah, it feels like it's right on the edge. Yeah.
This, I hate, I think I'm always comparing, country songwriters to Johnny Cash, but it does remind me of sort of the American recordings, particularly American 4 and 5, where there's a much darker vibe. And of course, he was in the Navy. Johnny Cash was in the Air Force. So there's, lots of parallels there. I mean, this is an interesting time in country music, and I think it might already be happening where you're kind of getting a split, between sort of that, basically like the stuff fueled by Nashville and country radio, that's catering to a certain audience. And then you've got these other artists that, are starting to be labeled with that like Americana thing.
And now country radio is having to react to that. And it kind of started a little bit with Chris Stapleton, but I feel like the way that Zach broke organically on his own without Nashville's help in any way, I think has opened the floodgates for other artists that are being discovered on TikTok and stuff now because of this. And Grady Smith is a guy who has a YouTube channel about country music. He used to be a reviewer for Entertainment Weekly, and he calls this country music's Nirvana moment, where this artist or band comes out of nowhere with the influences of the past, it put together in a new way without support of traditional radio or anything, and changes the face of what popular country music is right now. One thing I'll mention for those who haven't heard his older records, Smaller Acts, track 15, sounds a lot like some of the older stuff. You can hear birds in the background, and he cracks up a little bit from all the background noise, and it's very, you hear all the ambient sounds. It sounds like someone just recording a song out by a campfire. And I don't think that'll ever leave his repertoire. I think that's part of who he is as an artist.
His voice is less like Garth Brooks or Kenny Chesney, Blake Shelton style. It's more from that like folk style of like the Lumineers and Mumford and Sons, like, that delivery or that accent is more of that style.
But it sounds less suburban.
Yeah, I think a lot more interesting than the Lumineers.
Yes,
I
agree. All right. So Country Superstar also appears on Yellowstone. That's how you know they've made it. Zach Bryan. Go check out the self-titled album, Zach Bryan, and the whole discography, really. But he doesn't hold back. He just I think he records everything he's got. So they're all a little lengthy, but they're all enjoyable listens. He's a pleasure to take in. That's Zach Bryan with Zach Bryan.
Country boy, I love you.
All right, well, we are just wrapping up our third episode devoted to music from 2023. What have we learned?
Well, I mean, I think with these three records, we got a pretty interesting smattering of what's going on. With new releases, they're always a little bit hit or miss. I mean, the quality level is much lower than what we talk about on the show normally. But I think overall, I mean, I was pretty impressed with that Zach Bryan record, just among the three as being kind of a cohesive whole. But yeah, I think new music, it's a pretty good year for new music, in my opinion. We got a good variety of pretty high quality stuff coming out.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think? It's hard to tell when you're right in the midst of it sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know how to sum up 2023 in total just yet. And, there's albums I didn't even mention that I considered that might appear at the end of the year, but it's more work than listening to the stuff you like or going back to the past or things that are somewhat familiar. And I think we talk about this every time, but it's worth it for all you listeners out there that, kind of stick to what you were listening to when you were a kid, or it's worth it. Go mining, go looking for stuff. At least once in a while, go to albumoftheyear.com or something and just check out a few records, and see what you find.
Yeah, and there's something special about finding new releases are good. I mean, there's just something cool about liking something when it's actually happening.
That other people are discovering at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's fun to go back to when Metallica was at their peak or something, but it's cooler to like Metallica when they're at their peak.
Yeah, I mean, they have an album this year I didn't even mention. It's like 1,000 years long and sounds like Metallica, but doesn't,
It's kind of like, when everybody's watching like a TV show together at the same time and experiencing whatever the storyline is. You're kind of on the same page with everybody else.
And that's one to grow on.
I'm your density. I mean, your destiny.
All right, boys and girls, gather around. It is that time once again. Put our fate in the hands of a robot. Let's get that Wheel of Musical Destiny out here and see what she has in store for us for next week.
Your musical destiny will take you to the cinema, or as you might say, the movies. You will be exploring albums featuring songs that played a big role in the movies. Make some popcorn and enjoy.
Okay, interesting. I got to do some thinking about that one.
So, one example I can think of is old time rock and roll, right? In Risky Business.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, there are definitely some iconic songs that are a big part of movies. Cool. Should be fun. Yeah, so a quick reminder, you can go to our website, albumnerds.com, to submit your ideas for the Wheel of Musical Destiny. Fill out our little form there, and we'll consider them for a future episode. We don't have any ongoing Album Nerds Hall of Fame voting going on, but if we did, that's where it would be too.
Right. What's your favorite song from a movie? What kind of candy are you giving out on Halloween? Let us know. Join fellow album nerds on Discord at albumnerds.com/Discord. You can email us at podcast@albumnerds.com or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Album Nerds. Please subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast app. And if you'd like to support the show, you can do so via PayPal at albumnerds.com/support.
Thank you for joining us here on the Album Nerds Podcast. We'll catch you next time with some movie music.
Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next week.
I think you did that before.
Probably. Ahoo, werewolves of London.
Ahoo. Come on, Andy, get in. Ahoo.
Ahoo.
It was a graveyard smash.